Minutes ago, the world watched in shock as Diddy and Ryan Reynolds' secret feud spilled over into the courtroom. Behind the glitz and glamour of their celebrity personas lies a story of backstabbing, betrayal, and bombshell secrets. Stay tuned as we take you inside the explosive details of the courtroom chaos that has everyone talking. In the bright lights of Hollywood, where every handshake is a performance and every smile hides 100 secrets, the unspoken tension between Diddy and Ryan Reynolds had been a topic of whispered speculation for years. Their rivalry wasn't something that began with a single incident, but rather a simmering feud that built slowly, almost imperceptibly, as the two powerful figures navigated the same circles. To the outside world, it was easy to believe they shared nothing but polite indifference. But those who paid attention, the studio insiders, the eagle-eyed reporters, and the relentless paparazzi, saw the tiny cracks in that carefully curated facade. The first hints came in the form of hushed rumors. Whispers of backroom deals gone sour, brand endorsements that mysteriously fell through, and tense negotiations over lucrative film projects. Ryan, the affable everyman with a sharp wit, had long been Hollywood's golden boy, effortlessly charming everyone from talk show hosts to the average moviegoer. Diddy, on the other hand, was a master of reinvention, entrepreneur, musician, cultural icon, his influence spanning industries and generations. Both were powerhouses in their own right, but their ambitions clashed in ways neither would publicly acknowledge. Mysterious sources, those shadowy figures who lived on the fringes of the industry, began to hint that this wasn't just a difference of creative vision. There were deals that Diddy had allegedly intercepted, sponsorships Ryan was rumored to have snatched from under Diddy's nose, and egos bruised by perceived slights. Those in the know spoke of secret meetings in dimly lit hotel bars, where agents and managers tried to patch over the cracks before they became canyons. It wasn't long before the paparazzi, always hungry for the next big story, caught on. They began to notice the way Diddy and Ryan would avoid each other at glitzy events, how they'd flash those polite, tight-lipped smiles for the cameras before slipping off to opposite corners of the room. It was never obvious, no outright arguments or explosive confrontations, but in an industry that thrived on appearances, even the smallest slip was enough to fan the flames of gossip. Body language experts on social media began posting side-by-side photos of the two at awards shows, pointing out stiff shoulders and forced laughter. Tabloids ran stories with breathless headlines, "Hollywood's Coldest War," inside the Diddy and Ryan rift. Fans picked sides, though most were content to watch the drama unfold from the comfort of their Twitter feeds. Memes popped up, adding fuel to the fire. Diddy in a designer suit glaring at Ryan's easy grin, or Ryan turning away with a dismissive smirk. For their part, both men did what they did best, kept the show going. Diddy focused on his latest projects, music releases, new business ventures, and carefully orchestrated appearances that kept him in the headlines for the right reasons. Ryan, meanwhile, charmed audiences with another blockbuster performance, cracking jokes on late-night TV and playing the part of the easygoing star. But beneath that veneer, neither had forgotten the slights and the barbed comments that had passed between them, however indirectly. Insiders described a particular party in vivid detail, an exclusive gathering at a Beverly Hills mansion packed with Hollywood's elite. Diddy arrived late, flanked by his entourage, exuding an air of casual dominance. Ryan was already there, dressed in tailored black and surrounded by a cluster of friends. For a moment, the two locked eyes across the crowded room. It was a flicker, gone almost as soon as it appeared, but those who saw it swore the tension was electric. Like a storm cloud rolling in, one guest said later, a shiver in their voice. Of course, neither Ryan nor Diddy gave the tabloids the fireworks they craved that night. They exchanged brief, polite nods, raised their glasses in a perfunctory toast, and moved on. But the message was clear. There was no love lost here. In the weeks that followed, subtle jabs emerged in interviews and press junkets. Ryan cracked a sly joke about some people in the industry who think they are bigger than the game itself. He didn't name names, but the implication was enough. Diddy, never one to back down, dropped a line in a radio interview about snakes in the grass and the importance of knowing who's real and who's playing games. Each comment was small, almost forgettable on its own, but together they wove a narrative of a feud that was growing harder to keep under wraps. For the fans, it was catnip. They dissected every word, every photo, every scrap of rumor. Conspiracy threads sprouted on Reddit, mapping out the supposed timeline of betrayals and perceived power plays. Hollywood insiders, always ready to feed the hungry beast, added fuel to the fire with cryptic remarks of their own. The feud had become a story in itself, a modern-day Hollywood soap opera unfolding in real time. Yet even as the speculation reached fever pitch, the truth remained elusive. How much was real and how much was carefully orchestrated to maintain their brands? In an industry where perception was everything, no one could say for certain. But one thing was clear. The tension between Diddy and Ryan had finally become too big to ignore. The stage was set for something bigger, something that would take the whispers and turn them into headlines. As cameras flashed and fans clutched their phones, waiting for the next twist in this unfolding saga, both men knew the stakes. This was more than a petty spat. It was a battle for respect, for reputation, and for control in an industry that devoured the weak and cheered the downfall of the mighty. And for Diddy and Ryan, the real drama was only just beginning. The calm before the storm shattered in the early hours of a sleepy Monday morning when a series of leaked emails surfaced online. The leak, like a lightning bolt in the middle of a cloudless sky, sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Screenshots of cryptic exchanges between high-powered agents and studio executives appeared on gossip sites and social media, each email more tantalizing than the last. No one knew how they had been leaked, but their authenticity was undeniable. And at the center of every message? Diddy and Ryan Reynolds. Fans were quick to pounce on the scandal. The emails hinted at a conspiracy of betrayal and sabotage, weaving a tale of backstabbing deals and carefully orchestrated power plays. The messages weren't explicit. There were no direct accusations or damning confessions, but the subtext was clear. Words like undermined, sabotage, and off the books painted a picture of a bitter rivalry playing out in the shadows of Hollywood's glitziest boardrooms. One particularly explosive email caught everyone's attention. A message from an executive at a major studio, lamenting how Reynolds' team played us like fools and how Diddy isn't going to take this lying down. Another referenced a mysterious meeting at the Chateau where apparently deals were struck behind closed doors. Screenshots of these emails were shared and reshared, dissected in endless detail by armchair detectives and self-proclaimed Hollywood insiders. Fans were desperate to crack the code. Twitter and Reddit threads exploded with theories, some grounded in careful analysis, others descending into wild speculation. What was the deal Reynolds' team had supposedly stolen? Why was Diddy's name coming up again and again in these private conversations? The messages were just vague enough to be endlessly interpretable, giving fuel to the fire that had been smoldering for years. Diddy's camp didn't help matters. When approached for comment, his representatives issued a cryptic denial that did nothing to calm the growing storm. "We're aware of the malicious rumors circulating online," the statement read, "but we will not dignify baseless claims with a response at this time." Ryan, ever the master of public image, remained conspicuously silent. His social media feeds continued to show carefully curated content, cheeky selfies, promotional posts for his latest projects, giving no hint that behind the scenes, a crisis was unfolding. For those who had watched the feud from afar, the silence was deafening. The lack of direct denial only deepened the intrigue. If there was truly nothing to these emails, why wouldn't Ryan or Diddy simply dismiss them outright? The idea that there was something more, some hidden truth neither man was willing to reveal, made the story irresistible. Meanwhile, the media machine roared to life. Entertainment news programs ran breathless segments dissecting every word of the leaked emails, bringing on so-called industry experts to weigh in. Talk show hosts cracked jokes about Diddy's email drama and teased Ryan's next move. Tabloids splashed the story across their covers. Inside the secret war, what Diddy and Ryan really think of each other. It was a feeding frenzy, and no one wanted to be left out. For the two stars at the heart of the scandal, the fallout was immediate and intense. Diddy was spotted leaving an upscale restaurant in West Hollywood, his expression stony as cameras flashed in his face. Reporters shouted questions about the leaks, but he brushed past them without a word, flanked by a tight security detail. Ryan was seen jogging in a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood, AirPods in and head down, ignoring the paparazzi that lurked at every corner. Both men were masters at playing the public game, but there was no hiding the tension in their body language. As the emails continued to circulate, new details emerged, some credible, some clearly invented for clicks. A second wave of leaks included messages from an assistant to a powerful producer, hinting that there had been attempts to kill the story before it got out. These emails didn't mention Diddy or Ryan by name, but fans connected the dots with eager, and sometimes reckless, abandon. A single line, "We can't let this derail the project," sent conspiracy theorists into a frenzy. What project? What secret was so damning that it needed to be buried? In Hollywood's tight-knit circles, the impact was felt almost immediately. Phone calls went unreturned. Business partners grew cautious. Rumors spread that Diddy had called an emergency meeting with his legal team, determined to find the source of the leak. Ryan's inner circle was reportedly on high alert, instructing staff to be extra careful with emails and messages. Trust, once the currency of the industry, became a rare and fragile thing. Yet amid the chaos, there were moments of calculated calm. Diddy was spotted at an exclusive charity gala just days after the leak, dressed to the nines and flashing his trademark grin. On stage, he spoke passionately about his latest philanthropic initiative, seemingly unfazed by the media circus swirling around him. Ryan, meanwhile, posted a self-deprecating video of himself goofing off on set, the comments flooded with fans asking about the emails. He didn't respond, but the timing was telling, a subtle reminder that, at least publicly, he was still in control. Behind closed doors, though, the silence was anything but peaceful. Those close to both men said the emails had changed everything. What had once been an unspoken rivalry was now out in the open, its messy edges exposed for all to see. Managers scrambled to do damage control, while lawyers quietly prepared for the possibility of a full-blown legal showdown. Deals were put on hold, partnerships tested. In an industry built on image, the fallout from these leaks threatened to do real damage. For fans and casual observers alike, the spectacle was addictive. Every day seemed to bring a new revelation, a new piece of the puzzle. Influencers and gossip bloggers mined the emails for content, turning Diddy and Ryan's feud into clickbait gold. In the midst of it all, the two men remained steadfastly silent, refusing to give the world the messy fight it was so desperate to see. But the truth was undeniable. The feud was no longer a matter of whispered rumors. It was here, out in the open, and there was no turning back. The next chapter of the drama loomed, as lawyers on both sides prepared to escalate the fight from the headlines to the courtroom. And for Diddy and Ryan Reynolds, there was no telling how far this would go, or what secrets would finally come to light. As the fallout from the leaked emails continued to ripple through Hollywood, it became clear that this was no longer a matter that could be swept under the red carpet. Within days, both Diddy and Ryan Reynolds had assembled formidable legal teams, each determined to take the fight from the gossip blogs to the halls of justice. On a cool morning in Los Angeles, news broke that would take the feud to an entirely new level. Both parties had filed court documents alleging defamation, breach of contract, and a litany of other claims that read like a Hollywood script. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. Entertainment reporters rushed to the courthouse, their cameras trained on the steps as fans gathered in eager anticipation. For months, the drama had played out in the shadows. Now it was ready for the stage. Court documents, thick with legal jargon and peppered with redacted sections, began to surface. Each side accused the other of betrayal, of lies, of calculated moves to undermine careers and reputations. Fans camped outside the courthouse overnight, hoping for a glimpse of the celebrities at the center of it all. The air buzzed with speculation and the click of camera shutters. Handmade signs waved from the crowd, some supporting Ryan's easygoing charm, others backing Diddy's unapologetic bravado. It was as if the city itself had become part of the spectacle, the streets around the courthouse pulsing with excitement and a hint of chaos. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was tense. Lawyers in tailored suits shuffled papers and whispered strategy, their clients seated behind them in carefully curated calm. Ryan, dressed in a sharp gray suit, offered a polite nod to the crowd as he entered, his expression unreadable. Diddy followed minutes later, his posture straight and confident, his face set in a mask of cool determination. The two men did not acknowledge each other, but the energy between them was unmistakable, a silent standoff that spoke louder than any outburst ever could. Social media exploded with updates from the scene. Influencers live-streamed the courthouse steps, their commentary mixing fact and rumor in a chaotic swirl. News outlets set up makeshift studios on the pavement, analysts weighing in on the possible outcomes and the reputations at stake. The entire world seemed to be watching, waiting for the next twist in the story. In a pre-trial hearing, the judge, a no-nonsense figure with a reputation for cutting through Hollywood theatrics, urged both parties to remember the seriousness of the proceedings. "This is not a spectacle," she warned, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged courtroom. "This is a court of law. Leave your tabloid antics outside." But even she couldn't deny the unusual buzz that filled the room. Cameras couldn't capture the proceedings, but every word spoken carried weight far beyond those walls. Ryan's legal team hinted at secrets yet to be revealed. Their filings included references to deceptive practices and unfair competition, though the details were carefully redacted. Diddy's lawyers, equally combative, accused Ryan's camp of deliberate misinformation and calculated character assassination. Both sides painted themselves as the aggrieved party, each claiming the moral high ground in a battle that had been years in the making. Meanwhile, insiders whispered that this was only the beginning. Sources close to both stars said that what had been revealed in the emails was just the tip of the iceberg. More evidence, more testimony, and perhaps even more damning revelations were waiting in the wings. The courtroom showdown promised to be the main event, but the question on everyone's lips was what would come out once the witnesses took the stand. Outside the courthouse, fans formed makeshift camps, sharing theories and gossip in real time. Some argued passionately that Ryan was the victim of a smear campaign, a beloved actor caught up in a game he never wanted to play. Others insisted that Diddy was simply defending his name against someone who tried to play the industry's favorite son. In the absence of hard facts, everyone became their own detective, piecing together narratives from half-truths and social media breadcrumbs. For Ryan and Diddy, the stakes had never been higher. The courtroom offered the chance to finally tell their sides of the story, or at least, the parts they were willing to reveal. Reputation, brand deals, future projects. Everything hung in the balance. Each knew that whatever happened here would shape not just their personal feud, but their place in Hollywood's cutthroat hierarchy. As the sun set on that first day of courtroom drama, the city's skyline seemed to glow with a new intensity. Inside the courthouse, the judge set the date for opening arguments, urging both camps to prepare for what would be a marathon battle. Outside, fans and media alike speculated on who would come out on top. But one thing was certain. The hidden feud had been dragged into the harsh light of the courtroom, and there was no going back. In the quiet moments that followed, Ryan and Diddy each retreated to their respective corners, surrounded by advisors and confidants. The war had entered a new phase, and both men knew that the next act would be played out not in the press or on social media, but in the tense, echoing silence of a courtroom where every word, every glance, and every piece of evidence would be weighed and judged. And for the world watching, the show had only just begun. The courtroom was packed to capacity as the day of opening arguments arrived. Spectators and journalists crowded every available seat, their notepads and phones ready to capture every word. The energy in the air was electric, crackling with anticipation and the whispered echoes of scandal. It was as if the city itself had paused to watch Diddy and Ryan Reynolds face each other, no longer in the shadows but in the harsh light of a judge's scrutiny. Diddy arrived first, his expression unreadable behind tinted sunglasses. He walked with deliberate calm, every step a quiet challenge to those who thought he would be rattled. His lawyers flanked him, a small army in sleek suits, their faces impassive as they navigated the narrow aisles to the front. Moments later, Ryan entered the room, his usual easy charm replaced by a steely resolve. He wore a tailored suit that seemed to mirror the seriousness of the moment, his hair perfectly styled, his eyes fixed straight ahead. No smiles, no casual waves to the crowd. Just focus. The judge called the court to order with a measured calm, her voice slicing through the hum of speculation. "This is a civil matter, not a performance," she reminded everyone sternly. "I expect order and respect from all parties." Cameras were barred from the courtroom, but outside, live feeds from reporters crackled with updates as every movement inside was relayed in breathless detail. Diddy's lawyer was the first to rise, his voice smooth and confident as he laid out their opening argument. He spoke of reputations tarnished by lies, of deals sabotaged by whispered half-truths and calculated leaks. He painted Ryan as a charming opportunist who had used his likable public persona to mask ruthless business moves. "This case," he declared, "is about truth. About restoring the honor and respect that my client has earned through decades of hard work and relentless dedication." He referenced the leaked emails as a deliberate attempt to smear Diddy's name, an orchestrated effort, he claimed, to discredit a man who had done nothing but build an empire from the ground up. As he spoke, Diddy sat still, his eyes focused on the table before him, his jaw set in determination. There were no outbursts, no side glances, just the quiet, simmering intensity of someone who had waited too long for this moment to arrive. When Ryan's lawyer rose, the shift in energy was immediate. Her tone was measured, almost disarmingly calm, as she laid out her client's defense. She spoke of creative ambition and opportunity, of Ryan's rise as a Hollywood icon who had never needed to stoop to underhanded tactics. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice unwavering, "has built his reputation on talent, not manipulation. He will not stand by while others attempt to twist his success into something sinister." She argued that the emails, though damning on the surface, were taken out of context, snippets of conversations that painted an incomplete, misleading picture. She suggested that the real story was one of rivalry, Yes, but not of sabotage. This is not about defamation, she told the court. It's about misinterpretation. It's about the lengths people will go to spin a story that was never theirs to tell. As she spoke, Ryan remained composed, his face betraying none of the tension he must have felt. But his fingers, resting on the table before him, drummed a quiet rhythm, an almost unconscious beat of nerves or determination. The courtroom watched him closely, weighing every gesture, every flicker of expression. The opening arguments lasted hours, each lawyer weaving a careful narrative from the same tangled threads of rumor and reputation. At times, their words seemed to echo off the marble walls, a battle of rhetoric and reason that captivated everyone present. Outside, reporters relayed updates in real time, their voices crackling through speakers and screens across the city. The world was listening. But it wasn't just the lawyers who captured attention. Diddy and Ryan, though silent, seemed to speak volumes with every glance. There were moments when their eyes met across the courtroom, a flicker of shared history, of old wounds still raw. Each meeting of their gaze was brief, almost accidental, but it sent ripples of speculation through the crowd. What stories did those eyes hold? What truths lay beneath the calm masks they wore? The judge, too, seemed to sense the weight of the moment. She listened intently, her pen scratching notes on the pad before her. Once or twice she paused to clarify a point, her tone firm but fair. "Let us remember," she said at one point, "that speculation and assumption have no place in this courtroom. We will deal only in facts." But even facts, everyone knew, were sometimes slippery things, shaped by those who told them, framed by those who needed them to be true. As the day drew to a close, the judge adjourned the session, her voice echoing through the hushed room. "Tomorrow, we begin with witness testimony. I expect all parties to be prepared." With that, the courtroom emptied, the spell of the day's arguments lingering in the air. Outside, fans and reporters surged forward, desperate for reactions that never came. Both Diddy and Ryan slipped into waiting cars, their faces as carefully blank as they had been when the day began. For the world watching, the opening arguments had been a revelation. No longer was the feud a matter of gossip and guesswork. Here, in the quiet intensity of the courtroom, it had taken on the gravity of something real, two powerful men fighting not just for their reputations, but for a kind of vindication that went deeper than any tabloid headline. The stage was set for witness testimonies, for the secrets and half-truths that had always lurked in the shadows to finally step into the light. And for Diddy and Ryan, the knowledge that the next day would bring witnesses ready to share what they had seen, what they had heard, was a sobering reminder that in Hollywood, the show never really ends. It only changes form. The cameras might have been barred from the courtroom, but the world was watching all the same, waiting for the next act in a drama that had already become legend. The next morning, the air in the courtroom was thick with expectation. Rows of spectators leaned forward in their seats, the silence broken only by the soft rustle of papers and the occasional muffled cough. This was the day everyone had been waiting for, witness testimony. For weeks, speculation had raged about who would be called to the stand and what secrets they might reveal. Now, the time for guessing was over. The truth, or at least, the version of it that the court would hear, was about to be laid bare. The first witness to take the stand was a former agent who had worked with both Diddy and Ryan during the early years of their respective rises to fame. A slight man in a crisp navy suit, he adjusted his glasses nervously as he was sworn in. His voice was steady, though his eyes flickered occasionally toward the two men seated across from each other. "I've known them both for years," he began, his tone careful but firm. "They've always been competitive. Hollywood is built on competition, after all. But what I witnessed went beyond the usual jockeying for position." He described meetings where Diddy and Ryan's teams had clashed over endorsement deals, meetings where voices were raised, and agreements seemed to dissolve in a haze of unspoken resentment. "It wasn't always about money," he said. "Sometimes it was about pride. About who could outshine the other." Ryan's lawyer leaned forward, her questions gentle but probing. "Did you ever hear Mr. Reynolds directly threaten or sabotage Mr. Combs' deals?" she asked. The witness paused. No direct threats. But there were insinuations. Hints that if certain projects didn't go a certain way, there would be consequences. His words hung in the air, the implication clear, even if no explicit threat had ever been spoken. Diddy's lawyer rose next, his tone sharper. "Are you suggesting that Mr. Reynolds deliberately tried to harm my client's reputation?" he pressed. The agent hesitated, then nodded. "I'm saying there was a pattern. A competitiveness that sometimes crossed a line. I don't know if it was deliberate sabotage, but it was certainly personal. The courtroom buzzed with hushed murmurs, every eye flicking between Ryan and Diddy. Neither man flinched, though Ryan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Next, a former studio executive was called to the stand, a woman known for her ruthless negotiation skills and her encyclopedic knowledge of Hollywood's backroom deals. She spoke with crisp authority, her voice carrying easily across the hushed room. Hollywood is built on relationships, she said. And when those relationships sour, everyone feels the fallout. I was in the room when the emails you're all talking about were first discussed. They were real, and they were damaging. But what you have to understand is that everyone in that room was playing their own game. She described conversations that had taken place in private suites and hushed conference rooms, conversations where Diddy's team accused Ryan's camp of manipulating the press, and Ryan's people shot back with allegations of smear campaigns and sabotage. It was cutthroat, she said, her tone matter-of-fact. No one was clean. The judge listened closely, occasionally interjecting to clarify a point or redirect a wandering answer. Her questions were precise, aimed at cutting through the posturing and half-truths. Were these just rumors, she asked at one point. Or did you see evidence, hard evidence, that either man crossed a line? The executive paused, her lips pressing into a thin line. Evidence is a tricky word in this town, she said finally. I saw enough to know that neither side was innocent. But was it illegal? That's for you to decide. As the testimonies continued, the courtroom became a stage for confessions and careful denials. A former publicist for Ryan testified next, his tone apologetic. I liked Ryan, he admitted. He's charming, easy to work with. But there were definitely times when we played up stories that made Diddy look bad. It wasn't about destroying him, it was about keeping Ryan in the spotlight. Diddy's lawyer pounced on the admission. So you're saying your team manipulated the media to hurt my client's reputation, he demanded. The publicist swallowed, his face pale. We managed narratives. That's what publicists do. But did we outright lie? I don't think so. Ryan's lawyer pushed back, painting the testimony as nothing more than an attempt to shift blame. You're talking about spin, she argued. Not sabotage. There's a difference. But the damage was done. The courtroom buzzed with excitement as the words spin and sabotage were repeated in tweets and headlines across the internet. The final witness of the day was perhaps the most unexpected, a former business partner of Diddy's who had remained largely silent during the feud's early days. A tall man with a quiet intensity, he spoke in low, measured tones. Diddy and Ryan have always been forces of nature, he said. But when their paths crossed, it was like two storms colliding. Deals fell apart. Friendships cracked. And in the middle of it all were people like me, caught in the fallout. He described one deal in particular, a lucrative endorsement that had reportedly fallen through because of a whisper campaign orchestrated by Ryan's team. Ryan's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed the statement to stand. It wasn't just business, the witness continued. It was personal. You could feel it in every meeting, every glance, every carefully chosen word. It was a rivalry that was always just beneath the surface, until it finally erupted. As the day ended, the judge adjourned the proceedings, her face grave. We will resume tomorrow, she said. And I remind all parties that this is a court of law, not a forum for gossip. But the line between the two had already blurred, and everyone in that room knew it. Outside, the city buzzed with the echoes of what had been said. Social media exploded with speculation and hot takes, memes and hashtags spinning the day's testimony into viral moments. Fans argued over who had come out ahead, who was the real victim, who was merely playing the game. Inside the quiet of their private sanctuaries, Diddy and Ryan both knew that the battle was far from over. Tomorrow would bring more witnesses, more revelations, and perhaps more cracks in the polished images they had both worked so hard to create. The stage was set for the next act in a drama that had already become something more than a feud. It had become a legend in the making. As the witness testimonies played out in the hushed confines of the courtroom, the world outside roared with the sound of 1,000 headlines. News outlets, gossip blogs, and social media feeds were ablaze with updates, each more dramatic than the last. The Diddy and Ryan Reynolds courtroom battle had become the story of the moment, an irresistible saga of fame, betrayal, and the whispered secrets of Hollywood's inner circle. Outside the courthouse, reporters jostled for position, their microphones thrust toward anyone who might offer a fresh perspective. Cameramen balanced on ladders, craning for the best shot as the steady stream of witnesses arrived and departed. Every word spoken inside the courtroom found its way into the world within minutes, filtered and amplified through the relentless churn of the media machine. Major networks ran breathless updates throughout the day. The battle of the century, declared one morning show, cutting between footage of Diddy's stoic courtroom arrival and Ryan's cool, composed demeanor. Legal analysts were brought in to offer endless speculation. Did Ryan have a secret strategy? Was Diddy's silence a sign of hidden strength or a calculated PR move? Every glance, every raised eyebrow was dissected as if it held the answers to all the questions that had been swirling for years. Meanwhile, social media was a maelstrom of hot takes and armchair analysis. Fans took to Twitter and Instagram, their feeds flooded with memes and hashtags. #Team Diddy and #Team Ryan trended simultaneously, each side arguing passionately for their chosen hero. Videos of the witnesses leaving court were edited into dramatic montages, set to ominous music and shared millions of times. The spectacle had become a kind of gladiatorial combat, with the world watching and choosing sides in real time. Influencers and content creators capitalized on the frenzy, their YouTube videos and TikToks offering exclusive insights and inside scoops that blurred the line between fact and fiction. One viral video claimed to have unearthed never-before-seen footage of a private confrontation between the two stars at a Hollywood party, a video that, in reality, was nothing more than a carefully edited compilation of unrelated clips. But in the feverish swirl of the news cycle, truth often took a back seat to spectacle. In the midst of it all, Diddy and Ryan each seemed to find their own way to navigate the chaos. Diddy's team released a carefully worded statement, calling for a return to facts over sensationalism. The statement was measured and dignified, a quiet attempt to reclaim the narrative from the echo chamber of speculation. Ryan, meanwhile, posted a cryptic photo to his Instagram, no caption, just a close-up of his face half hidden in shadow. It was enough to set off another wave of theories and debates. As the media circus raged, the pressure on both camps grew. Deals that had once seemed secure began to falter as brands grew wary of being dragged into the maelstrom. A fragrance deal for Diddy reportedly paused negotiations, the brand's executives unwilling to be caught in the storm of bad press. Ryan's latest film project, a big-budget sci-fi epic, was rumored to be on the brink of losing a major investor spooked by the headlines. Yet for all the chaos, the real story was still playing out behind the courthouse doors. Each day's testimony brought fresh revelations, some more scandalous than others. A surprise witness emerged, a former producer who claimed to have seen Diddy and Ryan in a private meeting where tensions exploded. His account was vague, full of half-remembered details and dramatic pauses, but it was enough to send the courtroom into a fresh spiral of excitement. The judge, aware of the media's watchful eye, took pains to remind everyone of the seriousness of the proceedings. "This is not a game," she said, her tone sharp as she addressed both lawyers. "I will not tolerate theatrics in my courtroom. Let the evidence speak for itself." But outside those walls, the line between theater and truth had already blurred beyond recognition. Industry insiders watched the spectacle with a mix of fascination and unease. Behind closed doors, producers and agents whispered about the risks and rewards of aligning with either star. Hollywood had always thrived on drama, but this was something different, a courtroom battle that exposed the raw, unfiltered reality behind the carefully curated images of two of its most bankable names. Some saw opportunity in the chaos. A streaming platform reportedly approached both camps about a potential documentary, offering millions for exclusive rights to the courtroom footage and behind-the-scenes interviews. The idea that the feud could be packaged and sold as entertainment was almost too perfect, a final twist in a story already packed with enough drama for a dozen seasons of reality television. For the fans, it was a heady rush. Hashtags morphed into online movements, each new revelation a chance to dig deeper, to find the thread of truth in the tangled web of half-facts and outright fiction. In the absence of clarity, speculation became its own kind of currency, traded and reshared by millions. The line between participant and observer blurred, as fans debated not just what had happened, but what it all meant. And yet, for all the noise and the spectacle, the real stakes remained as serious as ever. For Diddy and Ryan, this was no longer just a battle for reputation. It was a test of resilience, a fight for control in an industry that devoured the weak and rewarded the ruthless. Each man knew that the media frenzy was both a weapon and a threat, one that could turn on them in an instant. As the sun set each night, the courthouse emptied and the cameras flickered off, but the world kept talking. The story had become bigger than the courtroom, bigger even than Diddy and Ryan themselves. It was a modern myth, a cautionary tale about power and ego, ambition and betrayal. And with each new witness, Each new headline, the legend only grew. For those who had watched from the beginning, the next act promised to be the most dramatic yet. The verdict loomed on the horizon, and no one, least of all Diddy and Ryan, knew what final twist lay in store. The final day of the trial arrived with a sense of electric anticipation. For weeks, the courtroom had been the stage for a drama that had captivated not just Hollywood, but the world. Every testimony, every whisper of scandal, had built to this moment. As the sun rose over the courthouse, crowds gathered early, their breath misting in the cool morning air as they waited to see who would emerge victorious. Inside, the tension was palpable. Reporters leaned forward in their seats, pens poised and cameras banned but still present in spirit, as the judge entered the room. The steady shuffle of papers and the soft creak of chairs were the only sounds that broke the hush. At the front of the room, Diddy and Ryan Reynolds sat, each surrounded by their legal teams, their faces unreadable masks of calm. The judge cleared her throat, her expression solemn as she addressed the courtroom. "We have heard from witnesses on both sides," she began. "We have seen the evidence and listened to the arguments. Today, this court will deliver its decision." A shiver of anticipation ran through the crowd. Outside, reporters spoke breathlessly into cameras, their updates broadcast live to millions of eager viewers. The world was holding its breath. The judge began to read the decision in measured, deliberate tones. This case is about reputations, about the words and actions that can elevate or destroy them in the court of public opinion. But here, in this courtroom, we deal with facts. She paused, letting her words hang in the air, the weight of them filling the silent room. "Regarding the allegations of defamation and sabotage," she continued, her voice even, "the court finds that while there is evidence of rivalry, of miscommunication, and of fierce competition, there is insufficient evidence to prove deliberate sabotage beyond reasonable doubt." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Ryan's shoulders seemed to relax just slightly, though his face remained impassive. Diddy sat as still as ever, his expression giving nothing away. The judge's eyes moved deliberately between them. "However," she said, her tone firm, "the court does find that both parties engaged in conduct that may have contributed to the public perception of this feud. In the world of Hollywood, where image and influence are everything, even the smallest actions can have enormous consequences." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. "This is not a matter of guilt or innocence in the criminal sense, but of responsibility. And this court finds that both parties share that responsibility." As her words settled into the heavy air, the room seemed to collectively exhale. It was not the definitive victory that either side had hoped for. It was a verdict that walked a careful line, acknowledging the messiness of ambition and ego without delivering a decisive blow to either man's reputation. The judge concluded, "I urge both parties to consider the damage that has been done, not just to their own images, but to the trust and integrity of the industry they represent." With that, she brought the proceedings to a close. "This court is adjourned." The gavel's soft knock was like a final punctuation mark on a story that had already become a legend. Outside, the world erupted in a frenzy of headlines and live updates. "Verdict in, both sides share blame in Diddy Reynolds feud," read the breaking news chirons. Fans debated the meaning of the verdict, some claiming vindication for Ryan, others insisting it was proof that Diddy had been wronged all along. For the two men at the center of the storm, the verdict was a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Ryan left the courthouse first, his legal team forming a protective wall around him as they moved through the waiting cameras and flashing bulbs. He offered no comment, just a polite wave and a tight smile before slipping into the waiting SUV that whisked him away. Diddy emerged minutes later, his entourage equally formidable. His head was held high, his expression calm but distant as he paused to acknowledge the crowd. He raised a hand in a gesture that was part wave, part silent statement, an acknowledgement that the world was watching, and he would not be bowed by it. Both men released carefully crafted statements to the press within hours. Ryan's was short and gracious, thanking the court for its measured decision and promising to move forward with renewed focus and respect for the industry. Diddy's was more defiant, acknowledging the verdict but insisting that the truth is bigger than any courtroom. Both statements were dissected endlessly, every word parsed for hidden meaning. In the days that followed, the entertainment world buzzed with analysis. Industry insiders wondered what the verdict meant for future projects, for the balance of power in Hollywood's rarefied circles. Some speculated that this would be the end of the feud, a final act in a drama that had consumed so much of the public's attention. Others insisted it was only the beginning, A new chapter in a battle that would continue to play out behind closed doors, in boardrooms and backrooms far from the courtroom's bright lights. For the fans, the verdict was a chance to stake a claim in the story. Social media lit up with fresh debates. Who had really won? Was it a draw, or was it a carefully worded victory for one side over the other? Memes flooded timelines, each one funnier or more savage than the last, as the internet did what it always does, turn the drama into spectacle, the verdict into legend. As the sun set over the city, the courthouse stood quiet once more. The cameras had packed up, the reporters had filed their final stories, and the world slowly turned its gaze to the next big scandal. But for those who had been there, who had watched the testimonies and seen the carefully guarded faces of two of the industry's biggest names, the memory of that final verdict would linger. And for Diddy and Ryan Reynolds, the end of the courtroom battle was not the end of the story. In Hollywood, there are always new roles to play, new stories to be written. But for a brief moment in time, they had faced each other in the bright light of truth, and the echoes of that confrontation would shape their legacies for years to come. In the days and weeks after the verdict, Hollywood slowly exhaled. The courtroom showdown that had once consumed every headline began to fade from the constant churn of entertainment news. But while the cameras turned their lenses elsewhere, the echoes of what had happened lingered like a ghost over Diddy and Ryan Reynolds' careers, and the city that had been their stage. For Diddy, the verdict was both a burden and a strange relief. He returned to the studio, pouring himself into new projects with the same intensity he had always shown. In interviews, he spoke of moving past the noise and focusing on the music, the real art. His team carefully managed every appearance, every soundbite, ensuring that the narrative remained one of resilience and defiance. But even in his most confident statements, there was an undercurrent of reflection, a quiet awareness that some battles leave scars that can't be wiped away by a well-timed press release. Ryan, meanwhile, leaned into the image that had always served him well, the easygoing charmer, the unflappable star. On talk shows, he deftly sidestepped questions about the trial, offering a wry smile and a quick joke to pivot the conversation. "Hollywood loves a comeback story," he said in one interview, his tone light, his eyes betraying nothing. He threw himself into his latest film, immersing himself in the role with a focus that seemed to suggest the best way to move on was to keep moving. Yet beneath the polished images, there were signs that the feud had left its mark. Insiders spoke of deals that fell through in the wake of the trial, of brands wary of being dragged into a story that was as much about perception as it was about truth. Diddy's fragrance line, once poised to launch with fanfare, was quietly shelved. Ryan's production company faced questions from investors who had once seen him as a sure bet. The court had found no outright sabotage, but the court of public opinion was never so easily swayed. In the quiet corners of the industry, private dinners and closed-door meetings, the verdict was dissected in hushed tones. Agents and producers, always attuned to the shifting winds of power, weighed the implications. Some said it had humanized both stars, stripping away the perfect images to reveal the flawed, driven men beneath. Others argued it was a cautionary tale, a reminder that even in Hollywood, where myth often masquerades as reality, the truth has a way of breaking through. For the fans, the aftermath was a chance to turn the story into legend. Online debates raged long after the court had adjourned. Who had truly won? Was the feud over, or had the verdict merely pushed it into the shadows? On Twitter and TikTok, fans crafted elaborate theories and witty memes, their timelines a living monument to a drama that had become part of pop culture itself. And somewhere in the middle of it all, the two men at the heart of the storm carried on. There were no grand reconciliations, no public displays of forgiveness. Hollywood had taught them both that the show must go on, and so it did. Diddy released a new track. Its lyrics carefully ambiguous, but fans read every line as a veiled message to his rival. Ryan took to the big screen again, his performance met with critical acclaim and a knowing nod to the chaos that had once threatened to consume him. As summer turned to autumn, a kind of uneasy truce settled over the feud. Both men seemed to understand that the courtroom battle had changed them, not just in the way the world saw them, but in the way they saw themselves. The show was over, but the lessons lingered. For Diddy, the fallout was a reminder that power in Hollywood is as fragile as it is intoxicating. The leaks, the rumors, the whispered betrayals, they had all been weapons in a war that had left no true victor. In private moments, he spoke of focusing on what mattered most: the music, the empire he had built with his own two hands. But those close to him said there were nights when he would retreat to his private studio, the door closed and the city's neon glow reflecting off the glass, and let the music drown out the noise. Ryan, too, found his own way forward. Friends said the trial had changed him, made him more guarded in his dealings, more careful in choosing who to trust. But in public, he remained the same, charming, self-deprecating, the master of the wry smile and the quick retort. It was a performance, perhaps, but one he had perfected long before the courtroom lights had ever found him. And as Hollywood moved on to its next scandal, its next big story, the legacy of the feud between Diddy and Ryan Reynolds settled into something like myth. It was a story that would be retold at parties and in quiet conversations in dimly lit bars, a cautionary tale about ambition and ego and the fine line between competition and destruction. But for those who had watched it unfold in real time, who had followed every twist and turn, it was something more. It was a reminder that even the biggest stars are only human, driven by the same insecurities, the same need for validation, the same fear of being left behind. In the end, it wasn't about who had won or lost. It was about the cost of the fight and the scars it left behind. As the city's skyline glowed in the twilight, Diddy and Ryan each stood at the center of their own quiet aftermath. The courtroom was empty, the crowds gone, the verdict delivered. But the real story, the one that would be told and retold, woven into the fabric of Hollywood's endless narrative, was only just beginning. And in that story, there were no clear winners, only the hard-earned wisdom of those who had dared to play the game, and survived.